George Soros plans the next country to speculative attack. How to prepare now? Well, George Soros is well known for being a billionaire political activist. He's one of the most successful investors of all time. But what many don't know is that he made his billions from investing by attacking and toppling governments, leaving a trail of destruction in his wake. And last week, news broke that shows us which country is next and how he is likely to do it. So in this video, I'm going to break down his techniques, how he made billions attacking countries. We'll look at which country he has his eyes on set to attack next, how he's doing it, and of course, what we could be doing, what we need to be doing to be on the winning side of this attack so we can protect our wealth and our assets. So let's go. All right, now real quick before we dig in, if you're new to the channel, my name is Mark Moss and I make these videos because I want to change the way you think about money because almost everything you've learned is wrong. Now I know it's hard to navigate these markets correctly. It's scary to think what happens if you get this wrong. So I take these complex subjects that affect your money, your family, your future, and I make them easy to understand, actionable, so you can be educated and knowledgeable about what's happening and coming in the future. And if you like these topics and want to help me get them out just to more people, do me one small tiny little favor, click on that like button so the algorithm sends it out to more people. And if you're not subscribed, hit that subscribe button and the bell notification so you know when I put new videos out. All right, let's go. All right, so let's dig in. I got a lot of information to cover today. I'm here to expand your thinking. I can't cover every single little piece in this short video. So hopefully this sparks your imagination enough and you can go do additional research. In the description down below, I have links to a lot of my research that can help you out. But to set the stage, in order to understand the speculative attack that's going to happen, or that is already happening, the dangers that's happened to people in the past and how we can protect ourselves, I need to set the stage a little bit. All right, so you have to understand a couple of things. So the first thing is that currencies, and of course, who controls them, the superpowers, change. Now, I've shown this chart before. If you're a regular to the channel, you've seen this. But you have to understand that currencies rise and fall. The reserve currency of the world has changed hands many times, and with that, the superpowers of the world has changed many times. You can see Portugal, Spain, Netherlands, France, Britain, USA. So they all get their time in the sun, and reserve dollar status lasts about 100 years. That's about it. That's the life expectancy. We have 80, 110, 80, 96, 105, 94. And you can see that they change hands quite often. Now we can see that the dollar has already been 100 years as the reserve currency. So we're running on borrowed time right now. We're already passing records and things are getting shaky. Now, on top of that, just on the reserve status, we also have fiat currencies have only lasted 35 years. So fiat currencies are not fake currencies like most people think. Fiat means by decree. So that means the government says, these are worth money because we say they are. And fiat currencies only last about 35 years. Well, the dollar was backed by gold. 1971 got removed from the gold standard and became a fiat currency. So no fiat currency lasts 35 years. Well, here we are that the gold standard ended 50 years ago. So again, the dollar is on borrowed time. Now, we can see just how fast this is actually crashing. This is actually showing the purchasing power of the US dollar. And this is only since 2007. This is only since 2000. Look how fast this is going down. And we can see the purchasing power of the US dollar going down as evidenced by the CPI basket. This is the consumer price index. This is the prices of things going up. So a lot of times people it's just a different way to get your head around it. They think that, oh, prices are getting more expensive. The reality is that the dollars are going down in value. It takes more dollars to buy those same things today. This is a really good illustration to kind of help get your head wrapped around a little bit. So this is the dollar's worth. So this shows the dollar going down 2020 here, starting at the beginning. Now we can see here in 1913, $1 would have bought you 39. $1 equals 39 Hershey's chocolate bars. Today that would cost you $26. Not one, but 26. We can see here in 1953, $1 would have got you 10 bags of pretzels. Today, that's $10. And we can go on and on, but you get the point of that. And so that's the first part to understand. Now, the next thing, now that you understand the life cycle of currencies are coming to an end, we're already on borrowed time, you have to understand that the currencies are being threatened. And they continue to get threatened. They continue to get weaker and weaker. Their own government, their own central bank attacks it because they keep on printing. And so the more dollars they print, the less each dollar is worth, less and less and less. And you have to understand this. This is a key point here, that currencies are backed by confidence. So a lot of people think that the US dollar is backed by the full faith and credit of the government, whatever that means. They think that it's backed by the military, but that's wrong. The military is backed by dollars, not the other way around. Really, at the end of the day, the currency is backed by trust. People have to trust it. People have to trust that when I put my money there, it will buy me goods and services in the future. When there's no trust left, when they start realizing, shoot, my dollars are buying me less and less and less, I'm losing trust. I'm losing trust in that currency, and that's when things start to fall apart. And of course, as I said, the government, the Federal Reserve, is doing their best to try to weaken that. We can see here, Biden proposes $6 more trillion of spending. That's how much they're doing. And we can see that throughout history, we can see why currencies collapse. We can see that the root of any collapse stems from a lack of faith in the stability or usefulness of the money to serve as an effective store of value. So when people start realizing my dollars aren't buying as much anymore, they're not storing their value, then users stop believing that a currency is useful. So we see this today. Look, hey, if I don't buy a house right now, I'm not going to be able to buy it in the future because homes are going up. If I don't buy my car today, my used car today, it's going to be too expensive in the future. I don't buy my lumber, my bicycle, my surf, whatever it is. But it's not that things are going up in value so fast. It's the dollar is dropping like a rock, and people are trying to get rid of their dollars as fast as they can. That's why you can't buy anything right now. And so that is what happens. Now, when that happens, people start looking for better options, places to put their money. Like, I don't want my money sitting in a bank. I might as well buy a house. I don't want my money sitting in a bank. I might as well buy a car. Right? And they start looking for other places to put their money, gold, Bitcoin, stocks, you name it, anywhere they can get it to try to hold that purchasing power. All right. So now that we've set that stage a little bit, I want to bring you to this next point. So this is a great book. If you haven't read it, I recommend it. It's an easy book, a short book, The Art of War by Sun Tzu. I've read this a long time ago, and I continue to read it because I'd like to understand this. So in The Art of War, we have to understand a couple things, right? So if we're going to be in a war, we have to understand the other side, who they are, what their motivations are, and things like that. So the first thing is that when you want to attack an enemy, you want to typically attack them when they're already weakened. And so typically you'll have things happening such as, propaganda, things that you can do to divide people, start to weaken them before you want to attack them, all right? The next thing is that when you do attack, you want to attack imbalances in the markets. And so you got to find the weak points, right? The pieces, the edges that you can attack, that you can have success with. All right, let me give you a couple examples of that. So there's a famous one. This was Black Friday. And Black Friday was a time when a currency was attacked. And it was somebody you may not have known back then, but you do know now, George Soros. And so George Soros was the famous for breaking the Bank of England. And basically at that time, he took down the Bank of England and made $1 billion in a single day. So let me explain how this happened. So he bet against the British pound, called the greatest currency trade of all time. Again, he made $1 billion in a day. What happened is the banks were trying to pretend that their money was stable, that they weren't printing more money, and they were trying to protect the peg with the German mark. And so he saw that and he started to bet against it to try to break the bank. And so he started with a $1.5 billion position against them, betting against them, trying to bring them down, and scaled it up to a $10 billion position in September. When that happened, he finally broke the bank. They had to give up the peg in September 16, 1992. The next day, the pound fell 15% versus the German mark and 25% against the US dollar. So when he broke the bank, the currency fell 25%. Now, that may not seem like that big of a deal to you, but if you lived in Britain and you held your money in that currency, you lost 25% of your purchasing power in just a couple of weeks. Now, George Soros, good for him, he made $1 million. $1 billion. George Soros made $1 billion. But everyone else in Britain, they lost 25% of their wealth over this. And of course, he didn't stop there. Once he figured out he could do this, then he went on to attack the Thai baht in 1997. Then he went on to attack the Japanese yen. And so he has continued to be a repeat offender. How George Soros broke the Bank of Thailand. We can see here that he went on to bet against the yen. And so he continues to profit off of destroying currencies and destroying governments, making lots of money. Unfortunately, for the people that live there and have their money in that currency, it doesn't work out too well for them. All right, now you may have known George Soros from other things because he's not just all finance. Now, he is one of the most successful investors in history. His track record is in the top tier of investors. He's made billions and billions of dollars, but today he's not just all finance. As a matter of fact, he has donated or given $32 billion to his nonprofit, which is called the Open Society Foundations. Now, we set the stage on the currencies, how they get weakened, how they get attacked. Now we're looking at the guy who's attacking him. Let's dig in and look at what his motivations are. Then we'll look at what the attack is, and then, of course, what we need to be doing to protect ourselves about it, because it is coming right now. Now, so he spends $32 billion to this Open Society Foundations, and they promote far left advocacy groups. Now, I'm not here to say which side of the aisle you're on, whether it's good or bad, you can decide. His NGO, his non-government organization, was voted to be the least transparent. And funny thing was, that was actually voted least transparent by his own other organization. Anyway, George Soros, born in Hungary. As of March 2021, he had a net worth of $8.6 billion. Well, that doesn't sound like he's that rich, right? Well, that's because he's donated more than $32 billion of his wealth to the Open Societies Foundation. So he's just given all his wealth to go out and change the world. So how is he changing the world? Well, that's something that we should probably know, because we live in the world and he's trying to change it. So how is that being done? We can see that here. From 2008 to 2018, they granted $3 billion in other nonprofits to particularly left of center and far left advocacy and activist groups. So let's take a look at some of that stuff. So what we can see here is that what he wants is what their programs are: an economy governed by the redistribution of resources. You understand that? Redistributing wealth. A justice system that reduces incarceration. If you're in the United States, you've been noticing how things are being decriminalized in California, especially. A comprehensive immigration reform. So that means open borders. So he's getting all the people from Syria to move up into Europe, all the people from South America moving up into the United States. A reduction in the racial wealth gap through what? Through income redistribution based off of race. So that's the kind of things that he's been promoting. Now, again, you have to understand the motivation. Back to the art of war. Know your enemy, because he is coming for your money and your country. You need to be prepared for this. Now, he's also doing a quiet overhaul of the U.S. justice system. And so what he's doing is he's basically taking over the entire U.S. justice system, one DA at a time. And so what do I mean by that? If you're not familiar, the prosecutor, he says, the prosecutor exercises the greatest discretion and power in the system. And so district attorneys used to be just a small local race. He came in with his billions of dollars to basically start taking over all the district attorneys. And you can see this, again, go do the research on your own, but the Soros-funded DAs oversee big cities with skyrocketing crime. Which cities? Oh, well, let's see. Philadelphia, St. Louis, and San Francisco. Just go do some research on that. See what happened when those DAs changed and what happened with the skyrocketing crime. All right, now, he also likes to topple governments, of course, right? So he's been doing it all across Europe, toppling one government after another. He spent a lot of money, as we can see, over $500,000 just to try to stop Brexit. So Brexit was trying to leave the EU, but he wants globalism. He wants all the countries there, so he's trying to stop that. They also partner with lots of other nations, including the U.S. State Department. And what they do is they want to influence and agitate revolution. So how do they do that? Well, you can see that in Georgia, it's a country in Europe, not in the United States, they did what's called the Rose Revolution. Remember color revolutions? This was the rose color revolution. In 2004, there was the Orange Revolution in where? In Ukraine. You might have heard a lot about that country. Another country where Soros was active. So these are called color revolutions. So again, go back and do some research, figure out what a color revolution is, because once you understand what it is, the world starts becoming much more clear. And you can see that he's doing that over and over again. In the United States, we can see that signs of protesters that have been waived came from a list of Democrat interest groups, and they have received millions from Mr. Soros. So they have a whole list of initiatives, and they push out their propaganda to show what the signs should say. So when you see the signs, you kind of know where they're coming from. Now, a lot of this could just be people that are mad. A lot of this could be conspiracy But I typically have believed that when there's smoke, there's typically some truth to that, some fire. We can see that a Hungarian attack on George Soros prompts NGO anger. Non-government organizations are pretty mad about this. There's over 100 countries that he seems to be supporting overthrows in their government, 100 countries throughout Europe. We can see that the Slovak premier sees Soros behind his plan to topple his government as well. Again, now, this could all just be conspiracy, but typically when there's smoke, there is fire. So now this brings us back to where is he attacking now, and what do we need to do with our money? All right, well, is the U.S. going to be next? Let's take a look at that. Open society can only be achieved through globalism. It's kind of so he wants the whole world to be one world government and have this entire open society, hence the name of his thing. And he wants to organize societies as collectivist, where we're all in this together, where we all live in a commune, we all share everything. You kind of get the point. Now, again, maybe some of these people are just mad. Maybe this isn't real. I don't know. Trump suggests that Soros might be paying illegal immigrants to come up to the U.S. In Turkey, the president in Turkey called him a man who assigns people to divide nations and shatter them. In Italy, Matteo Salvini has claimed Soros wants the country to become a giant refugee camp. Soros' financial support for anti-Brexit. In Parliament, Nigel Farage called him the biggest danger to the entire Western world. Vladimir Putin blamed him for organizing revolutions. His philanthropic foundations were banned from the country as a threat to state security. Hungarian Prime Minister Viktor had taken Soros baiting to a new level, erecting thousands of billboards. So he's fighting back. All these people are fighting back. Again, where there's smoke, there's fire. Now, per George Soros, we can see that he says that the member of EU states have gone far in surrendering their sovereignty. Remember, one world government, give up their individual sovereignty. The future of the EU will show how far it's possible to go along that avenue. Now, he calls it a democracy, but I don't think those people were voting for that. That would be typically what a democracy would be, right? In 2003, he said that the American model, which has been successful, well, if it's been so successful, why wouldn't we try to duplicate that in other parts of the world? That's what I want to know. Typically, you duplicate success. But he said that it depends greatly on the dominant position of the U.S. at the center of the global capitalist system, and we're not willing to yield it. So because the U.S. won't lay down its sovereignty for the world, that is a big problem. And so now, George Soros' march on Washington. The protests and unlawful disruptions were brought to us by a well-funded network. And where was that? Of course, George Soros. But what's his ultimate goal here? What's he trying to do? And how is he going to do it? That's the most important part, because we need to understand the attack now so we can protect ourselves. So he has a new battle weapon. This is an old battle weapon. He's got a new one. Now, he is a currency trader, right? That's how he's made his money, by attacking currencies, breaking them, making billions of dollars. Now he's also a philanthropist as well. All right. And he's announced a new initiative, and he does this through his own investment company, Soros Fund Management, which has $27 billion of funds. Now, he doesn't run that all himself. He has a chief investment officer, Dawn Fitzpatrick, and she said that fiat currency, again, the government's money by decree, fiat currency debasement from governments and central banks is driving demand for Bitcoin. Her words, not mine. Legendary investor George Soros is trading Bitcoin after eyeing digital tokens for years. All right, we can see that. But let's take a look at what they're actually saying, because this is pretty interesting. So Soros Fund Management has been looking at investing in cryptocurrencies since 2018. They've been looking, but they haven't done anything. Fitzpatrick, again, the CIO, Chief Investment Officer at Soros Fund Management, approved traders to prepare to trade Bitcoin in recent weeks. So they are preparing to start this attack on the currency. I'm going to explain how they're going to do this. A fear that governments and central banks were debasing fiat currencies was driving demand for Bitcoin. So they're debasing it how? Oh, by printing the $6 trillion we showed you. Now, the inflection point, this is the point that, triggered it for them, their epiphany moment, came as a result of fiat inflation. Fiat, so the increase of money, which seen the U.S. dollar money supply increased by 25% in the past year alone. So the government created 25% more dollars, which brought the value of down, which is why we have about 30% inflation. Per Fitzpatrick, that was the spark for them, the inflection point. She said, we're at a really important moment in time in that something like Bitcoin might have stayed a fringe asset. Maybe nobody would have ever cared about it. But for the fact that over the last 12 months, we've increased money supply in the US by 25%. Down here, they say the fund's faith in Bitcoin and its related technology appears to be equally matched. So they like the technology. And as much as they like it, it's equally matched by its distaste for more fiat inflation. So as much as they like the technology, they hate the fiat inflation that's happening. It says there is real fear. You see that? There's real fear. They better do something now or it's going to be too late. So this is where we get into the speculative attack. As we talked about in the beginning, he does speculative attacks against these countries. Remember, first you find your opponent, then you attack them when they're weakened. You attack them at the edges where they have their weakest points. And you see that Soros has a record of doing this, and he has the motivation to understand why he wants to do this. So how? How does he do it? And of course, once we understand how, then we know how to protect ourselves. So how would Soros do this speculative attack? Well, you have to understand the US dollar has an infinite supply. So there's no limit to the amount of dollars that can be created. They just push a button and another couple trillion and another couple trillion. And how about 8 more trillion? And they can, there's no limit, right? At the same time, it depreciates. So there's the amount of dollars is inflating while the value, the purchasing power is going down at the same time. And that's by design. The Fed targets, their goal is for a 2% inflation per year, meaning your dollars should be losing 2% of their value per year by design. That's their goal. Now they say it's about 5%. The reality is it's about 25% because they've created 25% of the dollars. Now you compare that to Bitcoin, which has a finite supply, never be more than 21 million. And it goes up in value. As a matter of fact, it's averaged a 200% compounded annual growth rate every year the last 11 years. So it's going up in value. It's buying more and more stuff while the dollar is buying less and less stuff. And so what you do is you borrow dollars at very low rates. On your mortgage, you got 3%, whatever it may be, whatever you're borrowing at, you borrow at really low rates, and then you buy the Bitcoin that's going up more than the rate of what you're borrowing, and then you profit as it appreciates while your debt inflates away. So why does the government want to keep rates so low? So they can inflate away their debt. If the inflation is higher than the level of interest you're paying, it's basically paying that debt off for you, and so that's exactly what happens. Let me give you a little bit of a more in-depth look of how this works. So Bitcoin is a speculative attack. Bitcoin is a speculative attack against the US dollar. Now this was explained all the way back in 2014 by Pierre Rochard. Shout out to Pierre Rochard. We'll link to his paper from 2014 in the description down below. But we already know, we set the stage that all currencies fail every 100 years. We already know that. And we know that good money drives out bad. That's called Pierre's law. So basically, over the span of several millennia, strong currencies have dominated and driven out weak currency. So if one currency is holding value and it's buying more goods and services in the future, but the other one is losing value and buying less goods and services, or people don't accept it, whatever, then of course, I'm going to want the strong one. As more people do it, it drives out the bad ones. Consistency, stability, and high quality have been the attributes of great currencies that have won competition. So consistency, right? Holding that purchasing power. Now what happens is this creates what's known as fiat bleed. And so Bitcoin's trend to increase in value on an exponential trend is as new users arrive in waves. So it is a little volatile, but every time it pumps, it brings new users in waves, as they say. And that it increases liquidity. So the more people that come in, the more people that buy, the more liquid it is, the bigger bigger positions that people can come in. And then what happens is we create the currency price. So the Fed is doing that for us. And so basically by inflating the currency, they're pushing people out of it. I better go buy that house. I better go buy that car. I better go buy anything, the stock. Get out of the US dollar. And so it's a slow bleed. And what happens is at first, people are very conservative and they invest only what they can afford to lose. I'll put a couple $100 or a couple $1,000, only what I can afford to lose. But after 12 to 18 months, now this is a key piece, after 12 to 18 months, not after a couple weeks, not after 2 or 3 months. So I know Bitcoin's down in the last couple of months. It's up 300% in a year. So after 12 to 18 months, their small stash of Bitcoins have dramatically increased in value. Their confidence increases, so they buy more. They see the price crash a few times. They've been in it for 12 to 18 months. They've seen the price go up and down. And now they start to see these crashes and they start to see these opportunities to buy more. And then that creates the currency crisis. The reality is that money is fungible. If you buy Bitcoins instead of paying down your debt, instead of paying your mortgage, instead of paying your credit card, instead of paying your car payment, your student loans debt, instead of paying those, you buy Bitcoin. Basically what you're doing then is you're leveraged Bitcoin. You're using borrowed money because you're not paying the borrowed money back. You're using borrowed money to buy the Bitcoin, doing leverage. Because the cost of borrowing the money, the annualized interest rate ranging from 0 to 25%, maybe on a credit card, like I said, probably a couple percent on your mortgage, is lower than the expected return of owning Bitcoin. Remember, it's been 200% a year for the last 11 years. Then what that leads to is hyper Bitcoinization. A speculative attack seems isolated to a few weak currencies at first because the purchasing power of Bitcoin is dramatically going up, as it has been. And then that leads to contagion. At first, just a few people buy it because they want to speculate, they want to gamble, they want to bet that the price goes up, not due to the inherent problem, right? And so that's how it works. Let me give you a real world example of this happening in real time. Like I said, it's happening now. You might recognize this guy, Michael Saylor. He's the CEO of MicroStrategy, and this is exactly what they're doing. So they're actually borrowing money. They're putting up bonds, borrowing money at a couple percent interest and using it to buy Bitcoin. $1 billion of Bitcoin, as a matter of fact. So they've borrowed at super, super low rates, hoping that the amount of appreciation on Bitcoin goes up more than the amount of interest that they're having to pay. And the thing is that the Fed cannot stop this because they can't raise rates. So if the Fed wanted to stop this, then they would make the rates on holding US dollars more attractive. And then someone might say, well, I'd rather hold US dollars because the rate's pretty good and I don't want to take the extra risk of holding Bitcoin. But they can't do that. The Fed can't raise the rates because they want to continue to borrow more and more money, and they have to service the debt that they have. So they're pretty much stuck between what we call a rock and a hard place. Now here's a couple charts that show you how this works. So you have the purchasing power of Bitcoin is going up. One Bitcoin used to buy $400 worth of goods. Now today, one Bitcoin buys $35,000 worth of goods. The power of the US dollar is going down. $1 used to buy 39 Hershey chocolate bars, as we showed you. Now it takes $26 to buy those same Hershey chocolate bars. And the way it works is knowing that as these are going up, you would borrow dollars to buy Bitcoin right here. And then as the price continues to go up, you borrow here, and right here, you sell a portion of the Bitcoin to pay off the debt. That's the speculative attack, how that works. Now, the key thing is that I don't want you to get left out on this. All right, I've set the stage. The dollar is weak. It's living on borrowed time. It's gone past 100 years for a reserve currency. It's gone past 35 years as a fiat currency. We know that George Soros has made his fortune off of attacking currencies and toppling governments. We know that he's focused on toppling the United States. And now they're telling us, the CIO is telling us that now they are going to start trading Bitcoin. All right. So he has billions of dollars and he rarely loses. I talked in the beginning, George Soros is one of the most successful investors in history. His track record of wins over a 30-year period is at the top of the very list. One of the most successful investors in history. He rarely loses. And what happens is, at first Soros comes in and does this, but then we see other players jumping in. Now, of course, I showed you Michael Saylor from Strategy is already doing the same. And whether you love or hate Soros, a lot of people hate him, maybe you love him. Either way, it doesn't matter. You do not want to bet against him because, as I said, he rarely loses. And this can happen way faster than you thought. As we talked about with the Bank of England, he broke the Bank of England, and Britain's lost 25% of their wealth within weeks. That's how fast it happens. And so you do not want to get caught on the wrong side of George Soros' trade. You don't want to lose 25% of your wealth within a couple of weeks. You don't have time to react. So you need to get on the trade with him right now. Remember, good money drives out bad, and that's exactly what he's doing. Now, I know for me, I do not want to bet against George Soros. Let me know what you think. Leave me a comment down below and tell me, are you going to bet with Soros or against him, or is he completely wrong and he's lost it? Maybe he's old. I don't know. Let me know what you think. Of course, give me a thumbs up on this video if you like it. You know I'm working hard to bring this data to you. If you don't like it for whatever reason, Give me a thumbs down, but tell me why. Leave me a comment down below. Ask me questions. I like to engage in conversation with you guys down there. That's what I got for you today. To your success. I'm out.